Did you know that people forget 90% of what they hear within a week? That's a shocking statistic. But there's a way to change that. What if I told you the key to memorable storytelling lies not just in your words, but in the pauses between them? Pauses might seem simple, but they pack a powerful punch. They can build suspense, deepen emotions, and make your message stick. In fact, research shows that using pauses can increase information retention by up to 40%. This means your audience is more likely to remember what you say if you give them just a moment to process it. In this video, we'll explore the hidden magic of pauses in storytelling. You'll learn why silence can be just as impactful as speech and how to use it to your advantage. From creating suspense to evoking deep emotions, mastering the art of pausing can take your storytelling to the next level. Are you ready to discover how a few seconds of silence can transform your stories? Let's dive in and unlock the true potential of your storytelling with the power of pausing. Chapter 1: The Secret Weapon. Why pauses speak louder than words. We often think storytelling is all about words. But what if I told you that silence can be just as powerful? Pauses are like the secret ingredient no one talks about. They give your story room to breathe and your audience time to feel. Studies show that silence allows listeners to process what they've heard. According to Julian Treasure, author of How to Be Heard, silence boosts engagement and helps us absorb information. Think about it, when you pause, you're creating space for your audience to reflect. They might remember a key point better because of that brief moment of quiet. Ever noticed how the most intense moments in movies often happen right after a pause? That's no accident. Pauses build anticipation, drawing us deeper into the story. Renowned storyteller Nancy Duart says, "Silence is one of the most powerful tools you can use." She's right. When you pause, you give people a chance to lean in. They're waiting for what comes next. A well-placed pause can change everything. It's about making sure your message lands, not just gets heard. When you're rushing through your story, your audience might miss the emotional punch. But when you pause, you're giving them a moment to connect. Next time you're telling a story, try it. Add a brief pause after a key moment, and watch how your audience reacts. Chapter 2: Mastering the Art of Suspense. Creating anticipation with pauses. Pauses don't just create space, they build suspense. The trick is knowing when to stop talking. In storytelling, timing is everything. Alfred Hitchcock once said, "There is no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of it." That's exactly what a well-timed pause does. It makes your audience crave what's coming next. Think of a story like a roller coaster. The pauses are the moments just before the drop. Your audience knows something big is coming, but they don't know when. Pausing right before a key point or twist makes that moment even more powerful. Take Barack Obama's speeches, for example. He's known for his pacing. He pauses before big ideas, making his words feel weighty. A 2016 study by Harvard found that speakers who use intentional pauses are perceived as more authoritative. It's all about keeping your audience on the edge of their seats. If you want to master suspense, practice pausing right before the climax of your story. It gives your audience a split second to guess what's coming, making the payoff even more satisfying. The key is not to overdo it. Pausing too much can feel awkward or forced. But when used sparingly, it's a game changer. Chapter 3: Turning pauses into dramatic climaxes. The pause emotion connection. Now, let's talk about emotion. Pauses are your best friend when you want to make your audience feel something. It's all about timing. When you stop for just a second after delivering an emotional line, you let the feelings sink in. This isn't just a storytelling trick, it's backed by science. Research from the University of Michigan found that silence activates the brain's empathy circuits. When there's a pause, our brains fill in the emotional gaps. A silent moment can make people feel more deeply because they have time to process the emotion. It's like hitting the pause button on their heart for just a second. Take a cue from Maya Angelou, who often used pauses to emphasize emotional beats in her poems and speeches. She once said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel." Pauses give you the space to make sure people feel. Here's a practical tip. If you're telling a personal story, pause after the emotional parts. Whether it's a heartfelt confession or a moment of triumph, give your listeners a moment to absorb it. It's about allowing the emotion to linger. Think of the last time you heard a truly emotional story. Chances are, the storyteller paused at just the right moments. Those pauses gave you time to react, to feel, to connect. That's what makes a story unforgettable, not just the words, but the moments of silence in between. If you're finding this information helpful, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification bell to stay updated on more storytelling tips and tricks. Chapter 4, Pacing Your Story. Why pauses give your audience time to process. One of the most common mistakes storytellers make is rushing through their story. They focus so much on the next point that they forget the importance of pacing. But here's the thing, your audience needs time to process what you're saying. If you don't give them that space, important details might get lost. A well-placed pause acts like a mental bookmark for your listeners. It gives them a chance to reflect and internalize your message. A study from Princeton University found that people are more likely to retain information when it's presented in small, digestible chunks, with breaks in between. This is exactly what a pause does in storytelling. Think of it like walking through a museum. If you rush from one exhibit to the next without stopping to look at each piece, you'll leave without really absorbing anything. But if you pause, take a breath, and focus on each part, you'll leave with a deeper understanding. Storytelling works the same way. If you're explaining a complex idea or introducing a new concept, pauses are crucial. They allow your audience to catch up and think about what you've said. You don't need to fill every second with words. In fact, the best communicators know when to stop talking and let their message sink in. Want to try it? The next time you're telling a story, pause after introducing a key point. Give your audience a moment to think before you move on. You might be surprised at how much more engaged they'll be. Chapter 5, Silence's Impact. How to turn awkward pauses into power moves. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. We rush to fill awkward gaps in conversations because we think silence means something is wrong. But in storytelling, those pauses aren't awkward at all. In fact, they can be some of the most powerful moments in your story. Jerry Seinfeld, the legendary comedian, once said, "The pause is not a pause. It's a moment of truth." Think about that. When you stop talking, you're giving the audience a chance to absorb the weight of what you've said. It's in those silent moments where the real connection happens. Pauses also create tension. When you stop speaking, your audience is left wondering what will come next. This suspense makes them pay closer attention. According to a study by Max Planck Institute, listeners become more attentive when a speaker uses unexpected pauses. That moment of silence can hold their focus like a magnet. The key is to embrace the pause. Don't rush to fill it just because you feel uncomfortable. Let the silence do the work for you. Instead of viewing silence as awkward, see it as a power move. A pause gives your story weight. It shows you're confident enough to let your words sit for a second without rushing to the next sentence. Practice using pauses deliberately. The more you use them, the more natural they'll feel. And remember, the audience isn't judging you for the silence, they're absorbing your message. If you found this video insightful, please hit that subscribe button. Join our community for more tips on how to elevate your storytelling game.